Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video we're going to update our navbar in order to show the login, sign up, logout links dynamically based on whether a user is signed in or not. Because right now we're always showing login, sign up, logout, even if we're not signed in. Because right now I'm not signed in. I go to account and it will redirect me back to login. Yet I still see the sign out or the logout link. Obviously this is not good practice. Also, same thing, if I log in, I'll still see the login and the sign up links, even though I don't need to. So what I want to do is, if a user is authenticated, only show the logout link. However, if a user is not authenticated, only show the login and the sign up links. Fortunately, Passport gives us information on the currently authenticated user. It's passed in on request.user. So let's go to, instead of main, let's pull up comics. And just on the index route, go ahead and as soon as we hit that, let's console.log request.user. And just that way we can just look at it down here in the console. So right now I'm unauthenticated, so I'm not signed in. Let's refresh the page and let's see what gets logged. Undefined, as you would expect because there's no user. However, if I log in, test, login, now you see that it shows my ID, my username, and my email. Basically all the information about this user other than their password stuff. It does not show their password salt or hash, which is obviously good for information security. So what we can do is we can use that inside of our EJS to determine what to show. So let's go ahead and pull up our navbar partial. Down here in the part where we are adding the links, I'm just going to add a little bit of space in there just so I can see a little bit easier. These two, login and sign up, we want to show if the user is not authenticated. This one we want to show if the user is authenticated. Now the catch with this is we don't have access to the user inside of here, so we have to pass it. So we know that we can access it here, so we just have to pass it in right here into the res.render. And then we can pass in, we can call it user is request.user. And I'll go ahead and let you know this is not how this is going to stay. This is not the best way to do this, because right now you would have to pass it into each route you're making. I'm going to show you how you can pass it into all the routes by default, but right now I want to make sure we understand it, and this is step one. So now we are passing that user into our EJS as we render the page, which now we can use the tools we already know how to do, our EJS tags, to conditionally render these. So let's set up some scriptlet tags. Why is it not doing the right thing? It would help if I could type. So this is if user, basically if there is a user, do something. Add the tags, else, in other words, if there's not a user, do something else. So if there is a user, in other words, if somebody is signed in, I want the logout to show. Let's fix our indentation. However, if there is not a user, I want these to show. What is with this indentation? Goodness gracious. Gurm, you're killing me. Good enough. So let's save that and see if this works. Refresh the comics page. Now I'm not logged in, so I can do login and sign up, but if I do log in, it'll only show the sign out. Now I can't show this to you yet because if I click login, it's going to crash. Think about why this might crash. It's crashing because user is not defined, and we are using user in our navbar, and our navbar is on every page. So I can't get to the login page because it's trying to render the navbar, and the navbar requires that user. And user is not being passed to the login page; it's only being passed to the index page. So what we want to do is we want to pass the user through into every single route. Now what we could do is we could simply copy this part, user equals request.user, and paste it into every single render call we do. Obviously that's not a great idea because it's not very dry and it can cause problems down the line. So instead we're going to actually delete it right here because we don't need it. We're going to add some middleware into our app.js that basically just passes that information on to all of our routes. So inside of app.js, which is right there, we're going to write some middleware. So I'm going to come down to the configuration section and probably just tack it onto the end, right before the routes. And we'll call this current user middleware config. And in order to make this work, you do app.use. And we just have to pass in the function that we want to use inside of that app.use. So we're going to do our middleware, request, response, and next. And then we're going to do response.locals.user equals request.user. And then we have to pass next, called as a function, in order to continue. Now response.locals is a value on the response object that's basically an object that we can add key value pairs onto. By doing that, it makes it available throughout all of our templates, throughout all of our routes. So what we're doing here is we are passing this request.user onto the locals.user so that we can access the user on any route, which is very handy. And also make sure to call next or else your application will stop working. And by using app.use, we're basically telling Express, hey, use this with every single route. Do this as middleware on every single route. So now you'll notice that the app.use passport.initialize is being called on every route, passport session is being called on every route, method override is being called on every route. All these app.uses are being called on every route and being made available on every route. That's what the whole app.use thing does. So now that we've set up this middleware, let's try it again. Let's refresh our page. This still works, even though we took that value out. Let's try to log in, and it does work. So let's sign in. Right now we have log in and sign up, and we do not have log out because we're not signed in. But if we sign in, test, you'll see it updates. Now it just says log out. We don't have the other two, and if we click log out, it logs us out, and we have these two back. In this video, we did a couple things. We updated the Navbar EJS in order to conditionally render the login, logout, sign up buttons based on whether the user is logged in or not. And then we also added some middleware to our app.js in order to pass the user object, the request.user object, which is given to us by Passport, to pass that on to all of our routes. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'll be happy to help. Thanks.